Bitcoin's weekly chart just closed short of the 50% level. We're 7 days away from a monthly close, which could be record highs here for Bitcoin. We're still 10% from the old all-time high, and we have a quarterly close coming up in 7 days' time. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It is your home of macro cycle analysis, where we cover everything from the stock markets, Bitcoin, crypto, and of course, real estate cycle in a non-hypey way. Just looking at the pure data and the facts from the charts. We leave the emotion to the titles and only the titles going out in YouTube. All right, guys, links in the top of the video description. We have our free Ultimate Traders Accelerator coming up. You will receive notification if you are subscribed to the free TIA report. Let's kick it off with the macro updates out there. Just a quick look at the interest rates to see what the masses are feeling and thinking about their interest rates, what's going on in the economy out there. Essentially, our thesis has been for months now. You can scroll back here on X to look at the posts moving forward, that interest rates would not be cut as heavily as what the Fed Watch tool was showing at the time. So remember, this is 2 to 3 months ago now, and there was a cut every single meeting throughout 2024. That's what the data was showing. If we look back even just a couple of days earlier to that, there was a cut for that particular month. Now, we've obviously seen no cuts in January, no cuts in March, and we're also seeing the data here shifting to the right, which means if it shifts to the right, that means there's less cuts likely. Essentially, we're at 5.25% to 5.5%, and we've now seen some of the numbers shift a little to the left, meaning they're hoping or expecting an interest rate cut. Now, the thesis that I've been presenting to you guys here on the channel is that if asset prices are continuing to rise, we're seeing stock markets continuing to grind up. We've seen real estate continue to grind up as well. Some places outperforming others, doing pretty damn well. If you're looking at your Western developed countries, Australia, UK, Canada, US, desirable areas that people want to be in, those places are going up. If we're to see interest rate cuts, that might put more gas on the fire for interest rate prices, for asset prices to go up even higher. So that's why we continue to keep a close eye on what's going on with these interest rates. What I've noticed is, at least in a couple of days, these figures here are shifting to the right. So it looks like there's going to be less cuts yet again, but it seems like they're hoping that we're going to see a cut in the June or the July period, because you're starting to see some of these numbers shift to the left. So the probabilities aligning more with a cut coming up, not this meeting, but the following meeting. We're also seeing a little bit move away from May and move towards the 5%, but we'll wait to see once we get to that point there. I suspect that we'll probably continue to see the climb to the right-hand side, so less interest rate cuts, just because of asset prices and how hot everything has been. We'll continue to update that, so make sure you stay tuned here on the channel. This is our 18.6-year cycle. Nothing has shown to suggest that we are not on track to continue up in this everything bull market. Now, I do have some historic data to have a look at for Bitcoin coming up in terms of this phenomenal run that Bitcoin has had into new all-time highs. And then, of course, the closes coming up this week. But just as a even bigger macro look here, we're across the 18-year cycle. We still have some years left in this cycle to the upside. Mega moves to the upside is what we have already seen, and I suspect we'll continue to keep seeing those. And when I talk about mega moves, we can see it from the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, even the Dow Jones has had a pretty significant move out of the October 2022 low and October 2023 low. In terms of percentages here to the upside, all pretty similar. S&P 500, let's have a look at that as well. Low to the high here, 28%. That's just since October. So in 5 to 6 months, 28% move to the upside. The NASDAQ also from this particular low to the high now, 31%. And so we're going to be closing out a quarter in a week's time. So the first quarter of 2024. So stay tuned to the channel. I've got some more macro videos coming up, just looking at how the year has progressed and what we can see moving forward as basically the bull run continues on from this point. So That's sort of look at the real estate. Nothing has changed here. We're still looking like we're heading up. Things are still looking like they're going to get even more crazy. Now, as I said, I want to recap this. I'll leave this for another video, but basically my 2024 forecasts, I've got them all here on a tweet, and I'll update those in the future videos we get towards the end of the quarter to see how these forecasts are progressing from there. So that's a look at the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, just in terms of how this move is heading, and it's going to be similar across the traditional markets as we climb up. I just want to take a quick look at some of the fractals here as the market grinds away. We project it from the COVID low. Nothing really seems that different to the market climbing out of the 2009 low. Now, I've got it on logarithmic here because, of course, the moves are going to be different if you take it off logarithmic. But essentially, just looking at the grind here, it's almost like dead on track in terms of the same percentage gains at that point. Let's have a look from the low to where we currently sit, about 116% with 48 bars, so basically 4 years out of that low. We go low to 48. There we are. You can see it's about 125%. It's almost been the exact same grind out of the GFC low compared to what we have just seen out of the, well, just seen last 4 years ago, out of the COVID collapse low. And the other theory that we have here on the channel is when the market breaks into new all-time highs, as it has done, typically what you will see is just a continued grind north, yes, with a couple of scary flush outs, but essentially it's just that continued grind north as the majority have missed out on the move. They've missed out on those lows, and they try to play catch up as the market continues to grind higher and higher with typically single digit corrections for the S&P 500. Someone got that confused and thought I was talking about Bitcoin in a recent video. I don't understand that's how that can happen. I specifically say on these stock markets, particularly S&P 500, you'll see single digit corrections with some double digit or low double digit corrections along the way. And this is on a monthly chart. So we still got a bit more grinding to do to the upside here. Now, Bitcoin's just opened up a new week. There was a massive gap up on the futures market. That was possibly or probably because the spot market was grinding up over the weekend, over Sunday. So you're seeing that price climb up from 63,000 up to 67,000, and it just closed short of the 50% level. And I've got a couple of other levels to get through for the short term, as we'll go through that, and then also look at the longer term, and then I'll give you my thoughts on and my opinions about the market. I want to get through more of the factual stuff here, obviously give you my thesis along the way to understand how I got to this point, but I want to give you the factual stuff so you can go away, do what you want with it, hopefully continue to research on it, and of course make the best informed decisions that you can possibly make. That's what we're seeing now with the futures market. Huge gap up here. Is it going to come back and refill? Let's see, you've got a price point down to roughly about $64,000, so about a $3,000 gap there for Bitcoin to fill. Something else we've been watching is the Google trend words here, just looking at Bitcoin, and the drop in interest over the last couple of weeks since that first push to new all-time highs. So the first week of March, it really did a solid run, taking out all the previous tops and getting back into the zones of where it was on its first significant low. So that period of June 2022 was $17,500. That's where the DeFi collapsed and CeFi collapsed and Luna had already collapsed. We hadn't got to the FTX collapse yet, which was basically this little peak here in interest. But basically the interest in Bitcoin, the search volume has been in that particular zone, right? But now over the last couple of weeks, search interest has really dropped off. Of course, the Bitcoin price has also dropped off, not substantially, but it has dropped off. And so that is potentially why we are still grinding out sideways. We'll look at just the facts on the charts in a moment, but just trying to understand this particular chart here, the pure facts of this chart, interest has died off according to Google search terms. Some will say people don't use Google anymore. I think that's absolute BS. The majority of people are still using Google. I don't know where that comes from. But anyway, let's move on to the crypto fear and greed index. The chart suggests that the greed is just cooling off here. So we've just been sitting around 70 to 80 for the last couple of weeks, going back to the 16th. The free ingredient index can remain elevated, as we've seen over the course of history. It can remain at the reading here in your 70s, 80s, sometimes even up to the 90s for a couple of months at a time. What we typically see though is a pullback in the market sentiment. That does not mean that the price has to dump either. This one here is a particular reading. You can go back to January, drop down to about 40. I know it's saying 75 there, but just look at where the dot is back here. The price was still elevated and it continued to climb again. That was basically a sentiment flush out that gave it more time to move to the upside. But I want to go into those macro moves for Bitcoin in a moment. You'll see some pretty interesting data about the extent of where we've currently got to, which might explain the drop off here in sentiment, but more importantly, the drop off in the search volume for Bitcoin. I'm not saying the cycle is over whatsoever. I'll get to that as well. Just sometimes things need to cool off and that triggers a lot of people. So for the short term, before we get into the longer term analysis, Bitcoin USD daily chart here, this was the 50% level. So looking at the low to the high, 50% through the middle, dead halfway point. The market has found a fair bit of resistance at 68 to 69, and the 50% was 67,300. The day closed at 67,200, according to Coinbase, which then means the weekly chart also closed at that price. Obviously, that being Monday, 67,200, still well above the 50% level of the weekly range to the top. So that was the ETF correction low at 38,500. So still well above 56K, still above 58K support and resistance, the previous area that it struggled with when it got to its first all-time high back in 2021. And then the final cycle top, it's also struggled with that 58. It got above, tested it, bounced off it, but then basically was only above that level for 5-6 weeks before it crashed back under, never to be seen again until now. So that's why 58 for me is a pretty significant level on the chart. You've got plenty of room to move to this area to the downside. Even if it did move to there, you've got a percentage there, 21%. It's basically a normal correction that we've seen Bitcoin do the entire way up. 20, 22%, 22%, roughly 21%. So it's basically the same thing over and over again. Could it go lower? Yes. Does it have to go lower? No. Could this be the final low here at 60,700? What do I know? I'm just following the chart and reviewing it to understand the strength and the weakness, which then allows us to action what we believe is going to happen next based on what we're seeing on the chart. So in terms of the short term, the 4 hour, it's in an uptrend. The daily had been in a slight uptrend here. You can see we got a higher low forming, but we still have not broken past those tops. So technically speaking, it's not an uptrend yet until it breaks out of these tops here. You can see these swing tops coming in at 68,900 and again 68,200. I'm calling it a nice even $69,000 because that was the previous old all-time high. So for at least the short term, you'd want to see Bitcoin get above that and consolidate above $69,000 to attack that all-time high sooner rather than later. That's all that it's suggesting there. So at the moment, it's in no man's land. It's basically just tracking sideways. You have to give the probabilities to the upside at this stage, but I'm still not 100% convinced until 69K breaks. So according to the technicals, 69K is the level. What I'm thinking, that's my view. I would wait to see it get above 69K to confirm that we will potentially see higher prices sooner rather than later. But I've still got the monthly to get through for you guys as well. Just having a quick look at the downside and your price targets there, just based on the charts. The low here is 60,700 and the previous $10,000 bar dropped down to 59,200. So about $1,500 separating it there. That's where my zone is for the daily and the 4 hour chart. If Bitcoin is to break down from that point, well, then you've got a fair bit more open ground to the downside. You've got your 58K, your 56K, maybe even 52 to 53. To get there, it needs to get past 59 and 60. So I'm not saying it will get there. I'm just saying you got to look out for these levels here. If it's able to hold up again, then maybe we'll test the upside. But until it breaks down 59 to 60K, don't expect it to get to the low to mid $50,000. As Bitcoin's been down from the top to the low for 6 days and still underneath the old all-time highs now for 11 days, this is starting to become one of the longest times that it hasn't broken to a new fresh all-time high or new fresh high. The previous move from February dropped down for about 3 days, and then it took 6 days to break to a new fresh high price. The previous moves here in late February dropped under for 4 days, broke above again in 5 days. So they're pretty much the two longest periods. So now we've exceeded those timeframes. Specifically, that's part of the theory that we've talked about due to this signal here with the 3 days down, lower lows and lower highs. That is what that signal presented at the time, and it is now playing out. So there's no ifs, thens, buts, you're wrong, this or that. It's playing out right now. The time frame along is still in question, but it's still longer than what we have seen through there, and that's all that rule is suggesting. So to give us a recap of what we've gone through with these corrections, I've got it here in black and white, essentially purple and white here. These are major points that we're looking at moving forward for Bitcoin. So note them down, screenshot it, do what you need to do. Number one, the top signal, that's at 3 days down. I've got another chart here for you guys. Here it is anyway. The Gann swing indicator, using the tool itself, you want to click show bar type. You can find a link to this in the top of the video description here, 7-day free trial, plenty of other tools there, including our dashboard here, which is getting a huge upgrade. Top signal, 3 days down, that's what it looks like with the red arrows, okay? Don't worry about the color of the bars, the red arrows. Suggests longer correction than previous corrections. That's just using this and going back testing it across this market. So just the facts right now, not anyone's opinion of Bitcoin has to cool off to 52K or you're wrong, that was the bottom and we have to go to 80K now. None of that stuff. Throw that out the window for now. Just use what the signal is suggesting based on the chart history already. Top signal does not confirm that this is the final top. Most likely higher prices. We looked at that already in the last videos, that the top, even though we've seen this signal multiple times across the history of Bitcoin, doesn't mean it's going to be the final top. There's been several times that you've seen the signal. It's taken 8 days, 13 days, 39 days, even 6 months before the price of Bitcoin broke back above to put in a new fresh high. So it's still very positive. I saw a comment as well last week saying, even though we're in bullish territory, you're not very positive. And I'm like, why should I be positive or negative about it? If you're after positive vibes, go to a positive vibe channel that pumps you up and destroys you at the peaks of the market. I know that's probably the view and the feeling of new investors. So if you're still here after 20 odd minutes, congratulations to you guys. You are progressing out of that noob stage where everything needs to be a positive vibe about the market. At the end of the day, I've been doing this for over 17 years. You're probably doing it for a little bit of time now yourself. You've realized it's not about getting pumped up and feel good about the money going up. That's my little rant about positive vibes when it comes to investing. Sorry for a laugh. It made me laugh at the time. And I have to stay a little bit humbled. I was once in that place as well. And yes, as soon as you can get rid of that, it's not about positive vibes, not about negative vibes. Get on with the data, as I shall do here, and forget the rant. Okay, 3 days down signal can be broken and then reversed. So just looking at the probabilities, meaning it can jump up and then break back down. We just saw that in March of 2023. This was one of those signals through the early stage here. So you got February and then into March, red, black or gray, red. So there was a signal in here after this particular peak, 13 days until it broke to another high, and then it collapsed into the banking crisis, which of course we know is from history is basically a non-crisis and one of the best buying opportunities that we have ever seen. So market shot up from that point. That was about 39 days until it actually broke out again to a new fresh top. So number 4, 3-day down signal. The median should read time frame in months was around 4 to 6 months that the price remained underneath that top from when the signal occurred. Number 5, 3 days down signal, shortest time frames, 8 to 13 days, and then we also saw roughly 30 to 40 days. That's why I want to keep this count going to see how far we are along in this journey. So we're at our 11th day. If this was to go on to 13 days, well, that would be Wednesday that you would see a breakthrough into the new all-time highs. Not out of the question. Let's just see what goes on from this point. 30 days takes us out to April, a week short of the Bitcoin halving, maybe a new all-time high there. And then 40 days could take us to 23rd. So basically almost on the Bitcoin halving. That's just looking at the shorter term timeframes here for this particular signal of the 3 days down. Signal does not suggest a deeper correction than current norm. So just because this signal occurred, it does not mean that it has to be a very severe drop. We're just looking at previous support and resistance levels purely just on the facts from the chart and looking at where this could come out as a potential base. We'll continue to follow up on the channel. Number 7, this is what I want to get to next. So I want to cover this off about our signal that we looked at. It has played out. We're seeing longer corrections of what we've seen in this entire move to the upside. Our previous correction to the low was 12 days after the ETF, and then to break out into a new fresh high price was 32 days, roughly around a month. Okay, 12 days down and then a month to break to that new fresh high. So keep those in the back of your mind. Now we have to get onto the monthly historic points about this market, how things are potentially shifting just based on the history that we've seen from Bitcoin and the likelihood, the probabilities of any sort of move. So bring on those positive vibes moving forward for this next stage. Rock on. Okay, monthly time frames suggest steam is running out. Just the probabilities. Green months in a row, upside swings in a row, seasonal monthly turning points. Okay, so green months in a row. So we can check this out here, just looking at the green months in a row. Now, the longest one I've seen is 2012, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. I think I've got it on the chart here to make it a little bit easier to view. That 7 months was back in 2012 and essentially had 3 months sideways with barely a movement in it. And then you had 3 months up and it basically went sideways again. So if you wanted to count that out as a green, even though it was down 10%, well, then you had a huge long streak into that peak in April. So there's one with a red, and then we had 6 months again to the peak. What else do we have in terms of the data? We had 6 months up into the 2021 top in April. So basically that first top. And now we are sitting in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're into our 7th month if Bitcoin closes green in 7 days' time. So that closing price for this month, the opening price, 61,161. So if Bitcoin closes above 61,161, this will be a green month. That'll be 7 months. That'll mean this will put Bitcoin at its highest ever, longest ever green month streak. So it's not impossible, but it's unlikely that you would see an 8th straight month. It's never done it before. It could do it. This could be that first time because of the ETF, because of the halving, because of whatever other narrative people want to bring up. And I know that triggers the others saying, well, it is a narrative. It's like, yes, it is a narrative until it's not a narrative anymore. These narratives come around every single cycle. ETFs are different this time, yada, yada. Forget about that. Let's just look at the data here. Even with all of the hype, remember Bitcoin, you need more money now into Bitcoin to push the price higher than what you did in the last cycle when the price was pushing through 13,000 or 20,000. We're now at nearly 70,000. So you need, 3-4 times more money to get that thing going higher, and you'll need even more money to push it even higher. So even though there are different narratives, and yes, the ETF is very, very important to bring more money in, well, you still need even more money to get the price going further. That's just the facts of money coming into the market. Let's go back to these numbers. 7 green months in a row. It's been done once before. It's done 6 months a couple of times. And it seems very unlikely based on the probabilities. What I do want to mention to that, though, is even if the market corrects, this is the best positive vibes I can give from it. You can see that the grind sideways, it was a long time. We've already suggested it could be 4 to 6 months based on the signal. You got 4 month grind here with the price just remaining in the previous month's price range. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it broke out. That's a long time. Most people are going to get bored. They'll forget about Bitcoin. They'll go into something else, and then they'll come back when the price breaks out again. That's what we want as longer term investors. So it gives you some more time. If it doesn't happen, that's all good. But I think that's fantastic news because you get to see the price grind at higher prices rather than it collapse. If we want lower prices, you'd probably want to see it get down to 48 to 52, maybe 56,000. I don't know, right? But this is a good thing. There's your positive vibes, a nice grind sideways. Did it again here, grinding within the previous price pump. So that's the entire range of that April bar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it broke out into that final leg, into that all-time high. So there was still a grind sideways for 5 to 6 months. There was another grind sideways as the market ran up for 10 months here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on the 6th month, it broke out of that price range. So that price bar of November, all the price was contained within that particular price range bar. Again, this one only just went out of it here in August, but you can see the June turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it broke out on the 6th. Okay, so you're starting to get a bit of a pattern here, 4 to 6 months. So what if we were able to grind away between these price ranges, 74K down to 59-ish K, maybe somewhere into this zone here? It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Not saying it has to happen, but you can see what's happened in the past when it comes to the market coming up pretty strong, the market remaining strong and grinding sideways for a period of time. Maybe it's the shorter term. Maybe it's the 1 month leading into the halving. Maybe it's the 4 to 5 months. I don't know yet. There's not enough signals to suggest that. What it is suggesting is that time looks like it's running out in a sense of enough steam to the upside. So that's your green months in a row. We've looked at the upside swings in a row. To recap that, we're looking at our monthly swings here. 6 swings in a row, higher highs, higher lows, not including the ones that went lower, okay? So 6 months in a row, it's happened 14% of the time. You can see we've got 6 months up, you've got 7 months in a swing here, you've got 6 months here, and then the rest of them are 5s. 5, 10, 7, 6, 9. So it's possible to go to 7. It's possible that April actually goes higher like it did in 2021. And now you have a red April, which still all lines up with, well, this one here would make it a 7th or an 8th month and then go red, right? But just looking at it back here, you've got April that went slightly higher, ever so slightly, and then it closed red, and then May was red. Big, big move to the downside. That was about a 50% move. So those are still all probabilities. 6 months to the upside is 14%. Should we see April go that little bit higher, maybe push to 75, 78K, whatever, doesn't matter. It's really not that big of a move to the upside, but the emotions might get there. That would be 7% of the time you would see 7 months or more in a row in one swing. So that really starts to put the probabilities on the side of a pause, maybe a tiny move to the upside, but maybe a tiny move or a correction to the downside. That sounds like up, down, sideways. But in terms of a solid move, like where you want this thing to go and give you bigger gains, then any sort of tiny swings to the up or down like you saw in April, I wouldn't necessarily be getting very excited about a move from 61.6 to 64.8, you know, $3,000 move, even if it broke it, right? So that's what I'm talking about here when it comes to these probabilities, that it seems like you'd at least see some sort of price consolidation around these levels between sort of mid 50s to mid 70s across maybe the next month to 4 or 5 months. For the total cryptocurrency market cap, we are getting close to this new all-time high. Should this also pause after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight months to the upside, forgetting this red, we're just looking at high highs, high lows, well, then you'd be looking back to somewhere around 2.17 to 1.87 trillion as some sort of correction. We'll get into this in a little more detail in future videos leading into the close of this month and the quarterly close as well, where I'll go through some of the forecasts that I had at the beginning of the year. I'll cover Bitcoin, I'll cover the stock markets, I'll cover real estate, crypto, everything here to recap us for the first quarter of 2024. Everything's looking pretty damn good. That's your positive vibes. Hit the like button for more positive vibes. Share it with a friend to share the positive vibes over with those guys, and let them know about the facts and the data from the markets, and they can get a good feeling about that too. See you at the next video, guys. Till then, take care and peace out.